Welcome, class, to chapter 5. I hope you've been enjoying reading about medieval Europe in the Middle Ages, and I hope you're excited to get into chapter 5. But before we do, let's kind of recap what we've learned so far. In the previous chapters, we've read about the decline and the fall of the Roman Empire. Part of this process included the division of the empire into the Western and Eastern empires. In the Western Empire, the Bishop of Rome's power increased. And in today's lesson, we're going to learn about a man named Charles who lived in the Western Empire and was king of the Franks. And not hot dog Franks, but the people, the Franks. Okay, so let's point out our focus objectives for today. We're going to learn and be able to describe the role of Charlemagne in uniting the Western Roman Empire. We'll be able to describe Charlemagne's life and personality and how they affected his ruling style and his achievements. And then, like always, we're going to be able to learn about the core chapter vocabulary words. So let us get started into chapter 5 by first calling attention to the big question. And that's right here, right? The big question, which reads, why did King Charles earn the title Charles the Great or Charlemagne? So as we read, we'll be able to learn why they called Charles Charles the Great or Charlemagne. So getting started, a head above the others. Monks and monasteries spread Christianity through much of what was Europe. In the late 1700s, however, one man would come along who was not a monk, but who would do more than any other person to spread Christianity and strengthen the Western Church, which was the Catholic Church that we learned about in chapter 3. That man was Charles, the king of the Franks. The Franks were a group of people who lived along the Rhine River in present day Germany. Charles was not just the king, he might have also been the tallest man in his kingdom. Charles was 6 feet 3.5 inches tall. We know that because his bones have been measured. So, and like it says right here, in today's standard, it's not very tall, but back in the 700s, when people were much shorter, this was very tall. So, his stature was also like kingly. He was very big. So, let's look at this picture really quick. This is really cool. Scroll down. So Charlemagne's people, the Franks, lived near the Rhine River. Here's a depiction of the Rhine River, kind of in the valley of these mountainous hills that we learned in science, right? So continue to read and make sure you're following along with me, all right? Charles was not only tall, he was also healthy and energetic as well. So he was very lively, had a lot of energy. He followed health advice you've probably heard all your life. He ate healthy foods, exercised every day, he loved to swim, and he got plenty of rest. He liked to nap. Who likes to nap? I also like to nap. Napping is nice. I only get 1 day a week on Sundays. That's the day I'll nap. But I will take advantage of it. He was a hard worker too, which I know a lot of you guys are. A lot of you are very hard workers and staying on top of your work, and I'm very impressed, so keep it up. He started having meetings the minute he got out of bed. Before he had finished dressing, his advisors would come into his bedroom and ask him questions. Now, that would be kind of a funny way to start your day while you're getting ready for the day and getting dressed, having people there and talking about, meetings and or talking about what to do that day. Charles's greatest talent was organizing and managing people. What does managing people mean? Well, managing is uh, read. That text is read, so that means it's a vocabulary word. So if we come down, it means to lead and direct, to run something such as a project or a business. The principal manages me as your teacher, but then also manages you as students to make sure we are on track to learn the things that you should learn every year. So continue to read. He knew how to inspire armies to fight, and he also knew how to move them quickly from one place to another. This was an important skill for a leader in a time when there was no reliable maps. He didn't give up either. Once he started something, he finished it. He expected the same of his men. So Charles enjoyed being king. Like most rulers, he enjoyed the power of ruling. But unlike some kings, he had goals beyond gaining power himself, and that is a very admirable goal, right? He enjoyed the power, but he wanted to use the power to help others. He wanted to spread Christianity and he encouraged learning. These goals and Charles's ability to make things happen combined to make him one of the greatest rulers Europe had ever known. Ah, that was awesome. So let's finish reading this section, and then I have a question for you. So Charles became so great that the great became part of his name. By the time he died, people were calling him Charlemagne. Charlemagne means Charles the Great, and that is what historians today call him. So, what was Charlemagne like, or what was Charles the Great like? Well, that gives you a hint. He was great. He was a great man, a great leader. We also learned that he was tall and a powerful man. He liked to take care of himself. He learned that it was important to be healthy, and he was healthy by eating healthy foods, exercising, getting good rest. He also had a lot of meetings. His meetings, remember, started at what time of the day? That's right when he got out of bed. Right when he got out of bed, when he was getting dressed, he had meetings. He was a leader and he was an inspiration to his soldiers, those that he led. He was a very great man. He also wanted to spread Christianity. Can't forget that. Okay, so page 37. To the rescue. The Frankish army was an impressive sight. So Frankish army was an impressive sight. Strong and disciplined, they wore leather vests and light armor. Their most important weapons were their swords, and Frankish soldiers treated their swords with care. Many of them had cases for their swords called scabbards, decorated with silver, gold, and even jewels. The Frankish army was very successful in battle. These strong soldiers, with their glittering weapons, conquered much of territory that had once been part of the Western Roman Empire. The Moors, or Muslim North Africans, controlled most of the Iberian Peninsula, including including Spain and Portugal. However, Charlemagne took parts of northern Spain as well as most of what is now France, Germany, Switzerland, and the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. He united them in a Frankish empire. He had success in northern Italy too. So we've just read about how the Bishop of Rome, in previous chapters, we read about how the Bishop of Rome, also known as the Pope, tried to gain more power after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. We've also read about that the bishops of Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem didn't like that very much. Well, Pope Leo III had enemies even closer to home. Powerful princes from the lands around Rome grew jealous of the church's wealth and power. The Pope's enemies actually attacked him as he was walking through the streets of Rome while they attacked the Pope. They pushed him to the ground, pulled off his robes, and beat him. The Pope fled and appealed to Charlemagne for help. Charlemagne did not let the Pope down. He sent an army to escort the Pope back to Rome, where his soldiers punished the Pope's enemies. The following year, Charlemagne went to Rome for two purposes. He wanted to make sure the Pope was safe from any more attacks, and he wanted to celebrate Christmas with the Pope. It was the year 1800, the beginning of a new century, and Charlemagne wanted to celebrate this special year with the Pope in St. Peter's Church. So why did Charlemagne visit Rome? There was two reasons. What was the first? That's right. He wanted to make sure the Pope was safe. And then what was the second reason he visited Rome? Something about a holiday that's coming up, not right away, but soon. Good job. He wanted to celebrate Christmas with the Pope. You guys are doing good, following along. That's awesome. Okay, so let's continue to read. Emperor of the Romans. We have two vocabulary words in this page. We have a lot of vocabulary words in this section. So make sure you're paying attention. Remember, you can get extra credit in history if you submit a text entry box with a sentence that you create on your own, not a sentence that's taken from book, but the sentence that you create and use the vocabulary word in that sentence. I'll give you extra credit points for that. All right, so let's read Emperor of the Romans. And I know you're following along, so continue to do so. It's awesome. The celebration proved to be even more special than Charlemagne had dreamed possible. According to one of Charlemagne's biographers, someone that wrote a story about him, Charlemagne prepared for a traditional Christmas Mass. Now, some of you might know what a Mass is. What is a Mass? So, a Mass is the name for the religious ceremony in which Catholics celebrate their relationship with God. So, people gather together and have a ceremony to celebrate the relationship with God. When he arrived at the cathedral, he found it packed with people all from all over his empire. His children were there too. Now, what is a cathedral? A cathedral is the bishop's church, any large and important church. So they all gathered as a mass, right? They gathered together in a cathedral. When Charlemagne reached the front of the cathedral, he knelt in prayer. After a long time, he stood up, and the Pope placed a crown on Charlemagne's head. I put a crown on this thumbnail for this video. I thought it was pretty cool. The people in the church cheered, "Long life and victory to Charles Augustus, crowned by God, great and peaceful emperor of the Romans," they cried. So crowned, or crown. To put a crown on someone's head in a ceremony, making him or her king, queen, or emperor of a certain area. So continue to read. So reading this today, it's hard to believe that Charlemagne was surprised by being crowned by the Pope. But that's the story that has come down through the ages. Sorry, excuse me. The crowning of Charlemagne as emperor accomplished three things. First, it gave the Roman an emperor for the first time since 4076. Remember, Odoacer, the king of the Germans, attacked Rome and sacked Rome, and that's when the empire fell. But now, in 1800, there's a new emperor. Second, this crowning gave Charlemagne the blessing of the Pope. And let's pause really quick. What is a blessing? Well, that's a vocabulary word. If we pull over here, a blessing is a prayer of support, protection, and approval for someone. So the Pope gave a blessing to Charlemagne. And the third thing that this crowning did is it established that Charlemagne agreed that the Pope had the power to crown an emperor. So it's symbolizing and it's showing Europe that the Pope has the power to crown an emperor. So let's learn about this new great ruler. Actually, sorry, let's pause really quick. Let's learn about why the Mass was important to Charlemagne and the Pope. What are some things that we learned that we just barely talked about? Some three things that just happened. Well, we learned that, like you're saying, the Mass got together in the cathedral, and that's where the Pope crowned Charlemagne to become the next emperor of Rome. We also learned that because of this crowning, it shows that the Pope has the power to crown an emperor. That's why the Mass was very important around Christmas time. Okay, so let's learn about this great ruler. So Charlemagne expanded his empire through warfare. However, what made him great wasn't what he did on the battlefield, but rather the way he governed his empire. Charlemagne built a beautiful capital city, Aachen, in what is now northwestern Germany. He built a palace and a chapel. He also had a great library. Wow, so here's a library outside a monastery, just like we learned in the last chapter. He started a school in his palace and allowed the sons of poor people to attend as well. That's very awesome. So Charlemagne believed that women should be educated as well as men, an unusual view for his time, even tried to provide free education for his subjects. Charlemagne was a good manager in times of peace as well in war. What is a manager? A person who leads and directs something such as a project or business. Let me pause really quick. I thought we already talked about manager, right? We talked about manage. Yep. So managing. So manager. He improved communication and organization throughout his empire. He sent teams of ambassadors chosen for their good character to enforce laws and solve conflicts in various parts of his empire. Like the Romans, he built roads and bridges to make trade and travel easier. When Charlemagne first began conquering the Saxon and other groups of people, long before he became emperor, he tried to force them to become Christians. At first, his rule was very harsh. People who would not convert to Christianity were killed. Later in his life, however, Charlemagne realized that force was not the best way to win people over. By the 790s or 790s, he allowed his conquered subjects to make their own choices about Christianity. Charlemagne died in 814. None of the rulers who followed had his gift for leadership. However, Charlemagne set a new standard for learning and management. He helped shape what would later become some of the modern countries of Europe. The Franks originally spoke an early sorry, the Franks originally spoke an early form of German. By the time Charlemagne died, many Franks were speaking a new language that was influenced by Latin. This language became known to English speakers as French. Over the next 200 to 300 years, the French speaking part of Charlemagne's empire broke away to form the Kingdom of France. So let's pause and look at this picture really quick. And how do we know what's going on in this picture or this map? That's awesome. You guys remember our first section of this year was talking about maps and reading a map key. So this purple symbolizes Charlemagne's empire. And then right here, Aachen is the capital of the empire. And then we have all these cities like Paris, London, Rome down here. So Charlemagne ruled areas that would become part of modern Europe. Okay, just one more section, guys. You guys are doing awesome following along. Just read 2 more paragraphs with me. Sorry, that was 4. 2 more paragraphs with me, and we'll be all done. So, the Holy Roman Empire. Charlemagne's empire continued in various forms for hundreds of years. Part of it expanded toward the east. It still included Rome, however, and a strong alliance remained between the Pope and the rulers of the German speaking empire. Okay, let's pause really quick. What do we notice about that paragraph that we just read? There's a vocabulary word, alliance. So let's look over to the right and learn what an alliance means. An alliance means a partnership of different countries, organizations, or people who agree to work together. Now, Mr. Green and I have made an alliance to help each other throughout this year. I'm a new teacher to Hozho, and so he's helping me. And then we're also doing this hybrid where we're online and in person. And so we're helping each other be able to do both those things because it's a lot of work. So that's a little example of an alliance. Okay, our last paragraph for chapter 5. In the 1200s, the Habsburg family took control of this German empire. It was at this point that it became known as the Holy Roman Empire, having been blessed by the Pope. This empire stretched roughly from the North Sea and the Baltic Sea in the north to the Mediterranean Sea in the south, and from the Rhone River in the west to beyond the Oder River in the east. Okay, that is chapter 6. So before we end this video, let's call attention again to the big question. And the big question was, why did King Charles earn the title Charles the Great or Charlemagne? So some key points for you guys to put in your answer should include something about his talent, him as a manager and how he managed people, what did he do for the Pope, and then what in turn did the Pope do for Charlemagne? And then what are some things that he established and built? And what did he do for Christianity? So your answer should have some of those points in your answer to get full credit. Doesn't have to have everything, but it should have some of those in there. Okay, well, that was an awesome lesson. I hope you enjoyed learning about Charles or Charles the Great or Charlemagne. And I will see you guys in the next video. You guys are awesome.